Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into some Amish country news today. It's not just about buggies and bonnets this time. There's a story that's got people talking.
Yeah, really interesting. This new law in Ohio is stirring things up for sure.
Really is. It seems so simple, right? Lights on buggies. But
So, but it's turned into this whole debate about tradition, safety, religious freedom, all kinds of things.
exactly. It's almost like a classic David and Goliath situation.
Yeah, you could say that.
The Amish community up against the state of Ohio.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot to unpack here. I mean, we've got news articles, we've got legal documents, even a transportation study to look at.
Yeah. And what's really fascinating is that this goes way deeper than just road safety. It's about their whole way of life, their beliefs, their right to practice their faith.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. What exactly is this new law in Ohio?
Well, basically, it requires all animal-drawn vehicles, which pretty much means Amish buggies, right, to have these flashing yellow lights. For visibility, they say.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, State Senator Nikki Antonio, she was a big part of getting this law passed. She said that she was out driving one day and she saw these buggies on the highway, barely any lights, and it really shook her up. She really felt like better visibility was super important for safety.
I can see your point, for sure. Especially when you consider just how many buggy accidents there are.
Oh, yeah, you're right. The Ohio Department of Transportation, they did a study, and between 2009 and 2019, there were over 700 buggy crashes.
Wow.
Over a dozen people died and over 100 had serious injuries.
That's a lot.
And the study even found that you're actually more likely to get seriously hurt or even killed in a buggy crash than a car crash.
Really? Why is that?
Well, buggies don't have all those safety features cars have, like airbags and stuff, and they go much slower, so the speed difference with cars can be really dangerous.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
So the state's basically saying, look, these flashing lights will make people notice the buggies more, slow down, and maybe prevent some of these accidents.
Seems logical, right?
But then you've got the Amish perspective to consider. And it's not that simple, especially for a group like the Swartzentruber Amish. They're really conservative.
I've heard of them.
They've actually had this agreement with Ohio since way back in the 60s. They could use reflective tape and lanterns on their buggies instead of flashing lights. But this new law, it kind of throws that agreement out the window.
Yeah, I see the problem.
And for them, it's not just about safety, it's about their religious belief.
Really? How so?
Well, they see this whole thing as like embracing modern technology, which they believe goes against their values, humility, reliance on God. They're worried it's like a slippery slope, that it'll start changing their way of life.
I can see how they feel that way.
And you hear the sentiment a lot from individuals within the community, like Emery Troyer, he's spoken out, said they put their trust in God's protection, not technology.
Powerful statement.
Yeah. And it's not just talk, they're backing it up with action. Corey Anderson, he's a sociologist, he's been tracking this whole thing. He says over 220 citations have been given out, mostly to Swartzentrubers, because they're refusing to follow the law.
Wow. Really taking a stand.
And they won't even pay the fines because they see that as admitting guilt.
Wow. That's commitment.
And they've even gone a step further. They've gotten lawyers involved.
Lawyers, whoa. That seems pretty unusual for the Amish.
It is. It really shows how important this is to them. They went to Harvard Law School's Religious Freedom Clinic, no less.
That's huge.
They're not messing around. They're saying, this is a fight for our way of life. It's pretty amazing to see this small traditional community going up against the state with Harvard Law on their side. Makes them seem like the underdogs, it really does. And it sets the stage for what could be a landmark legal battle, maybe even impacting religious freedom across the whole country.
This is already so interesting, and we've only scratched the surface. But before we go any further, what do you think so far? What stands out to you?
What stands out to me is the sheer determination of the Swartzentrubers. They're willing to go up against the state, face legal challenges, potentially even consequences to protect their beliefs, their way of life. It makes you really think, what's important enough to take that kind of stand.
Absolutely. It's a testament to the strength of their faith. It really raises some big questions about how we as a society balance religious freedom with everything else. We were just talking about how these buggy lights are forcing us to think about how we balance tradition and modern life. It's crazy how such a small thing can raise such big questions,
Yeah, totally. It shows how connected everything is. Like, we're talking about buggy lights, but it's really about values, how different ways of life can exist together.
Exactly. It's like think globally, act locally, right?
Exactly. And it makes you realize that we often just assume that progress and being modern is what everyone wants.
Yeah.
But the Amish are like, hold on a second.
Right.
Yeah.
They're challenging that idea.
Yeah.
For them, technology and all that stuff, it actually takes them away from their values. Makes you think about what progress even means.
Yeah, maybe it's not one size fits all. Maybe it's about letting different groups thrive, but respecting their values and traditions too.
Good point. And this whole thing is showing us something else too, like who really has the power here?
Oh, yeah, that's huge. You can't ignore the fact that this is a small, pretty isolated community taking on the entire state government.
It's David and Goliath all over again.
Totally. And they're not backing down, even though they could face legal stuff. It reminds you that even a small group can make a difference if they believe in something enough.
And speaking of making a difference, I was wondering about the impact this case could have. You mentioned it could set a precedent for religious freedom cases. What did you mean?
Oh, yeah. So if the courts side with the Swartzentrubers, it could mean stronger protections for religious freedom, not just for the Amish, but for other groups too.
So this buggy light thing could change the whole landscape of religious freedom.
Potentially, yeah. It could make it harder for states to pass laws that people see as going against their religious beliefs.
Wow, that's a big deal.
It just shows that sometimes even the smallest issues can have huge consequences.
It's like a domino effect.
Exactly. We're all connected, and what happens in one place can impact everywhere else.
So we've talked about the legal stuff and the bigger picture, but let's go back to what you said about assumptions.
Hmm.
I think this story is making us rethink what we thought we knew about the Amish.
Yeah, for sure. We tend to have these ideas about who they are and what they believe, but this case is showing us how complex it really is.
Right. We might think they're all anti-technology, but we've seen that's not true.
Right. Remember that Swartzentruber guy who's now for the lights after being hit by cars? Even in the most traditional groups, people change and adapt.
It's a good reminder that the Amish are just like any other community. They have different opinions and experiences, just like everyone else.
Exactly. So, we should be careful not to stereotype anyone.
Okay, so what can we as listeners take away from all this?
I think the biggest thing is empathy. Trying to understand everyone's side, even if we don't agree with them.
Stepping outside our own bubbles.
Exactly. And we need to think critically. Don't just believe everything you hear. Ask questions, look at different perspectives, and form your own opinion.
This case is a perfect example. It started with buggy lights, but look how deep it goes.
Right. And lastly, I think this reminds us that even when things feel divided, we can still talk and disagree respectfully.
We can learn from each other.
Yeah, we can learn from each other. We're all human, and we need to figure out how to live together peacefully.
I love that. These are really important lessons, and they go way beyond just this buggy light issue.
Totally. These are things we can use in all parts of our lives, like politics, different cultures, even just talking to our neighbors.
It's about being open-minded.
Exactly. It's about understanding different perspectives and making the world a better place for everyone.
Through all this talk about the Amish in Ohio, it's striking how this is a real-life David and Goliath story, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. It's this small community holding on to their traditions, standing up to the whole state government.
They're basically saying, we might be small, but we're not backing down. We're fighting for what we believe in.
And they're not being aggressive about it. They're using the legal system, which can be pretty intimidating, to fight for their rights.
It's peaceful resistance, but powerful.
Mm.
And they're really committed to it.
Makes you think, who's the real giant here? The state with all its laws, or the Amish with their faith and their way of life?
It really does. It's about more than just this one case. It makes you think about the power of believing in something, even when it's hard.
That's it. Real strength isn't always about being big and powerful. It's about standing up for what you think is right.
And that's something everyone can learn from. So what about the ripple effects of this case? What happens next?
Well, if the Swartzentrubers win, it could have a big impact on religious freedom, not just for the Amish, but for other groups too.
So this buggy light thing could change things for a lot of people.
It could. It might make it harder for states to pass laws that interfere with people's religious beliefs.
Wow. That's a lot bigger than just lights on buggies.
It shows how even something small can have a big impact.
This whole story has been really eye-opening. We started with buggy lights, and now we're talking about religious freedom, tradition, and the power of the state versus the individual.
Yeah, It's like those little things can teach us big lessons.
I have a lot of respect for the Swartzentrubers and how they're standing up for their community and beliefs.
Me too. It's definitely made me think more about religious freedom and how important it is to balance individual rights with what's good for everyone.
So, as we wrap this up, what are the big questions we should be thinking about?
How do we balance tradition and progress in a world that's constantly changing? How do we make sure everyone's safe and also respect everyone's freedom?
Big questions, for sure, and something we all need to think about, no matter where we live or what we believe.
Exactly. It's about respecting each other, listening, and finding ways to live together.
Well said. Be sure to like and subscribe to the HCOandMORE YouTube channel for more Amish news.
If you like my videos, like and subscribe, and throw a comment down below. Have a great day.